Vesta, grant us your favor. Now we open our lips in your service, if it's permitted for us to approach the sacred grounds of your temple. I was absorbed in prayer. I felt celestial powers, and the ground gleamed with a joyful bright light. I didn't actually see you, goddess. I banished the lies of false prophets. Nor should you have been seen by a man. But the things which I hadn't known, and by the error of which I was held, were made known to me with no instruction. They recall that they had celebrated the Perilia 40 times at Rome, when the goddess was received in the temple as the guardian of the flame. The work of the peaceful king, the Sabine land bore no one more reverent of divine power. The roofs, which you see are now made of bronze, back then you would have seen thatch, and the wall had been woven with flexible twigs. This little place, which supports Vesta's atria, then was the great palace of bearded Numa. Meanwhile, the form of the temple, as it now stands, is said to have existed before, and a good reason for its shape lies within. Vesta is in fact the same as the earth. Each has an untiring fire within. The earth and the hearth both indicate her seat. The earth is like a ball held up by no support. Such a heavy weight is suspended because of air pushed under it. Its own circular motion holds up the sphere in equilibrium, and whatever angle might press on its parts, there's none at all. And since it is placed in the middle region of things, and it touches no side more or less, if it weren't round, it would be nearer to one side. The world would not have land as its middle weight. There's this globe suspended by Syracusan art in enclosed air, a small model of the huge heavens. And however much the earth withdraws from the heights, it withdraws likewise from the depths. The round form makes it so that can happen. The face of Vesta's temple is the same, no angle runs through it, and its dome protects it from heavy rain. You ask, why is the goddess attended by virgin priestesses? I'll find the reasons for that also in this part of my poem. They recall that Ceres and Juno were born from Ops by Saturn's seed. Vesta was the third. Each of the other two had married and were said to have borne children. Of the three, there remained only one, intolerant of a man. Is it a wonder if a virgin, pleased by her virgin priestess, accepts into her sacred rites hands that are chaste? Nor should you understand Vesta to be anything but living flame, and from flame you see that no bodies are born. Therefore she is a virgin by right, who puts out no seed nor takes any, and she loves the companions of her chastity. For a long time I foolishly thought that there were images of Vesta, but I soon learned that there are none beneath the curved dome of her temple. An eternal fire is concealed within the temple itself. Neither Vesta nor the fire has an effigy. The earth stands by its own power. She is called Vesta from standing in her own power, and the reason for her Greek name could be the same. But the hearth is so called from the flames, and because it nourishes everything, which, moreover, was, in the old days, in the first rooms of the house. From this also I think it is called the vestibule. And so when we pray, we begin by saying, Vesta, who holds the first place. Long ago it was the custom to sit together on long benches in front of the hearth fires, and to believe that the gods were there at the table. Now also, when they perform the sacred rites of ancient Vicuna, the Vacunales stand and sit before the hearth fires. Something else comes into our age from an ancient custom. A pure platter brings food offered to Vesta. Look! Bread hangs from donkeys crowned, and flowering garlands cover the rough millstones. In earlier days, farmers used to bake only spelt in their ovens, and the goddess of the ovens has her own rites. The hearth itself used to prepare bread placed under ashes, and a broken tile was laid on the warm floor. And so the baker reveres the hearth and the mistress of hearths, and the donkey, which turns the pumice millstones. Should I pass over or recount your embarrassment, red-faced Priapus? It's quite a funny little story. Cybele, her forehead encircled with a turreted crown, called together the eternal gods to her celebrations. She called the satyrs too, and the nymphs those countryside powers. Silenus was there too, although no one had called him. To narrate the feasts of the gods isn't allowed, and it's a long story. Suffice it to say, the night was spent awake with lots of unmixed wine. Some wander carefree in the valleys of shady Ida. Some lie down and raise their limbs in the soft grass. Some are playing, sleep takes holds of others. Some link arms and strike the verdant ground 3 times with their foot. Vesta lies and takes a peaceful rest in safety. Just like that, her head supported by a bit of earth she was laying on. But the red-faced garden guardian is chasing nymphs and goddesses, and he carries his feet wandering here and there, and he spots Vesta. There's doubt whether he thinks she's a nymph or if he knows she's Vesta, but he himself denies that he knew. He took up ill intentions, and he tried to approach her in secret. He took anxious steps, his heart beating. By chance, old man Salinas had left the donkey on which he had been carried at the sounding banks of the gentle water. The god of the long Hellespont was about to start on the attack when the donkey brayed with an untimely sound. Terrified, the goddess rose with a loud cry. A whole crowd flocked together, and Priapus fled through their hostile ranks. Lampsacus has a custom of sacrificing this animal to Priapus, singing, "Fittingly, we give to the flame the entrails of the informant," whom you, goddess, decorate with necklaces of bread in commemoration. Work stops, and the empty mills become still. I'll tell you the meaning of the altar of Jupiter the Baker, on the citadel of Jupiter the Thunderer, more famous for its name than its worth. Surrounded, the capital was pressed by fierce Gauls. The siege had already brought famine for some time now, and when the gods had been called to his royal throne, Jupiter said to Mars, "Begin." Mars stepped forward and replied, "It's unknown, of course, what the fortune of my people might be, and the pain of my soul lacks a voice for its complaining. Nevertheless, if you require me to report in a few words their misfortune, compounded with shame. In short, Rome lies under an Alpine foe. Is this the people to whom power over everything had been promised, Jupiter? Weren't you going to place this people over these lands? They've already crushed the suburban peoples and battered the arms of the Etruscans. Hope was running her course, but now she's driven out from her own hearth and home. We have seen decorated old men, triumphal in their embroidered clothes, cut down in their bronzed halls. We have seen the pledges of Ilian Vesta carried out from their seat. Clearly they think there are some gods. But if they were to look at the citadel where you all live, and all of your homes pressed by siege, they would come to understand in the absence of resources that there were no gods left, and that incense given by an anxious hand is wasted. And if only a place for fighting lay open, they would take up arms, and if they couldn't win, they would fall. Now, lacking resources and fearing a disgraceful fate, a barbarous horde presses them, shut in, on their own hill. Then beautiful Venus and Quirinus with his Lichuus and Trabea, and Vesta all spoke many words in favor of Latium. Jupiter responded, "There is common cause on behalf of those walls, and once they're conquered, the Gauls will pay the price. But you, Vesta, make it so that they think that the food, which is in fact lacking, remains. Don't abandon your seat, Vesta. Whatever there is of solid series, let an empty machine break it up, and when it's been softened by hand, let the hearth harden it in flame." He had given the word, and at her brother's orders the maiden daughter of Saturn nodded. And now it was the middle of the night. Already toil had given sleep to the generals. Jupiter spoke to them and instructed them with his holy voice what he wanted. "Get up, and throw from the top of the fortress into the midst of your enemies the resource which you least want to throw." Sleep left them, and driven by the unusual messages, they asked themselves which resource it was that they would be unwilling to hand over, and which they were commanded to. It seemed to be Ceres. They threw the cereal gifts. They sounded, tossed onto helmets and long shields. The expectation that they could be conquered by famine fell away. With the enemy driven back, a shining altar was set up to Jupiter, the baker. By chance, I was returning from the Vestalia festivities on that road, the Via Noa, which now connects to the Roman Forum. There I saw a woman descending, her feet bare. I was dumbfounded and halted my pace. An old woman who was nearby sensed what was happening, and bidding me to sit, she spoke, her head and voice trembling. "This place, where now there are fora, held swamp waters. A ditch was drenched by water spilling out from the river. That was the Lacus Curtius, which now supports dry altars. Now it's solid ground, but before, it was a lake. The Velabra, where they lead parades into the circus, before was nothing but willows and hollow reeds. Oftentimes a party guest, returning home near the suburban waters, would sing and sling drunken words at the sailors. And that god, fitting with his many shapes, had not yet taken his name from the river running back in its course. Here also was a grove thick with rushes and cane, and the swamp was not to be approached by a shod foot. The pools receded and their banks kept the waters in check, and now the land is dry. At any rate, the custom itself remains." She had given her explanation. "Farewell, excellent elder," I said. "For what remains of your life, let everything be easy for you." The rest I learned long ago in my boyhood. Nevertheless, it's for that reason that I can't let it pass by. Ilus, the son of Dardanus, had recently made new walls. Ilus, up to that point, used to have the wealth of Asia at his disposal. When it was believed that a celestial sign of arm-bearing Minerva dismounted her chariot in the cities of Ilium, I was anxious to see it. I saw the temple and the place. That's what's left of it. Rome holds palace. Smintheus was consulted, and hidden by the shady grove, he spoke these words with a mouth that didn't lie. Protect the ethereal goddess, and you'll protect the city. She will transfer her power to the place. Ilus protected it, and held it in the citadel enclosed on the heights, and passed down its care to his descendant Laomedon. Under Priam it was kept, safe, but not enough. This was what she wanted, from the time when her beauty was beaten in the contest. Whether the kin of Adrastus or Ulysses studied in the art of trickery, or it was Aeneas. They say it was captured. It's unclear who did it, but the fact is, it's Roman. Vesta watches over it because she sees everything with her undying light. Alas, how the fathers were afraid at the time when Vesta burned and was nearly buried by her own roof. Holy fires were blazing together with unholy fires, and profane flames were mixed in with pious ones. Terrified, her priestesses wept, their hair let down. Fear itself stripped away the strength of their bodies, when suddenly he came on the scene and spoke with a great voice. Metellus. Hurry! There's no use in crying. Take the fateful pledges with your chaste palms. They aren't for prayer, but for taking in hand. Oh, what are you waiting for? He spoke. He watched them hesitate and sink to their knees, trembling. He drew up some water, and lifting his hands, he said, "Forgive me. These are holy. As a man, I enter the sacred spaces where men are forbidden to go. If it's a sin, the punishment will come, sent to me. Let Rome be saved by the damnation of my head." He spoke, and he burst into the temple. When she was taken, the goddess approved of the deed, and she was saved by the service of her priest. Now, holy flames, you shine under Caesar. Now the fire is and will be in Ilian hearths, and no priestess will be said to have defiled her chaplets with him as leader. Nor will she be buried in the ground alive, so the unchaste perish, because that which she has violated, into her she is returned. Tellus and Vesta are, after all, the same divine power. Then Brutus took the surname Caliacus for himself from the enemy, and dyed the Spanish soil with blood. Of course, in the meantime, sadness is mixed with our joys, lest our festivities delight the people in their whole heart. Crassus lost his eagles, and his son, and his men at the Euphrates, and in the end, last of all, he himself was given over to death. Parthian! What are you laughing at? The goddess said. You'll give back the standards. Someone will exact vengeance for the murder of Crassus. He will be the avenger.